to the show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats podcast. And this week for the podcast, I want to welcome a new guest. Like I said, recently we've been kind of, talking to some of the previous guests and just kind of getting along and everything and catching up with folks. But here we are with a new guest here. I want to welcome to the show a U.S. Army veteran and a mindset and weight loss coach as well. To the show today, Mr. Kevin Brewer. What's up, Kevin? How you feeling today, my friend?
Doing great, man. How you doing?
Doing all right. Thank you again for doing this and just making the time. I always appreciate anyone that is willing to give me some time to sit here on a Sunday afternoon with me and let's just talk. Because always find it weird. I have friends, I'll call them and they don't want to talk on the phone. But if I say to a friend, "Are you trying to be on the podcast today?" like they'll do it. But they so I always think of podcasts as like phone conversations with friends that everyone else gets to listen in on.
There you go. That works for me, man. I like just conversations fun.
So I guess I want to start off just learn a little bit about you, just kind of getting that, the story of you going into the military and, kind of transitioning from there to a Spartan athlete, and then also the mindset coaching and where that all kind of began for you.
Yeah, just small correction. I was Navy, not Army, but that's okay. I won't hold it against you. No, no, I did spend some time in Afghanistan with the Army guys, so it kind of counts. They'll get mad though if anybody hears it, they'll get mad at me. But that's kidding. So I kind of grew up in a small town in Illinois. Kind of a rough childhood. My dad was alcoholic, and him and I just didn't really get along growing up. So he was prior Navy too. That's not really what led me to the military. What led me to the military was just that area had no jobs and stuff. So I was kind of new, I wanted to get out, just for purposes of being able to have a career. And so later on, him and I kind of, got back together and worked things out and everything. So everything was fine there. But that kind of started out a lot of my mental stuff there, ways that kind of overcome things. But that was always a way to overcome and adapt and just live life or, get through things was all physical. So I then joined the military, went and did stuff there. Spent some time in Afghanistan, or started in Hawaii, then came to the DC area, and then ended up in Afghanistan for a year. I came back and I had a lot of health issues crop up. I had sinusitis that came up real bad, and then I got in a bunch of antibiotics for that that did ligament damage I didn't know about. I was born with psoriasis, so I had that going on. I had GERD, had all these different things. I had a couple hernias that had popped up from Afghanistan, and all these things kind of got together at the same time. And on the way back too, I got like swine flu or something that was going on around that time. So I got really sick, really bad, and had a lot of issues. So I was starting to get healthy from that. Lifting weights, I felt some kind of pop in my neck, upper back area. And of course, I did the smart thing, went and played basketball instead of lifting. And then starting that night, I just kind of woke up, started having like some heart issues and stuff. I felt like I was having a chest pain, things like that. And it just kind of got worse and worse and worse, kept waking me up. Ended up going to the emergency room. They said there was nothing, but my heart rate just kept going up. And for the next 13 years, plus 13 plus years, that kept happening. That everything physical happened would just escalate that. And it started getting worse and worse. And eventually my nervous system basically shut down. And I got to a point where I was, transitioning out of the military because I was having all these health issues anyway. But I couldn't really get to work anymore. I was 240 plus pounds. I couldn't barely go from the couch to the fridge without effectively getting paralyzed. If I looked up, I'd be paralyzed for a couple hours. Just all kinds of stuff. My nervous system was just a train wreck. Went to doctor after doctor after doctor over the years, and just never really got any help. So eventually I just kind of started doing it myself, figuring out my own path, figured out what was wrong with me, doing some different things, looking at my own MRIs and getting online and asking questions on Reddit and stuff. And I found out I had cervical instability, a lot of thoracic issues too. Went and found a doctor in Colorado who does stem cell therapy. Started doing some stem cell therapy in my neck and completely changed my life. And during that process, I found the mindset stuff, which helped me kind of get my weight under control, just using mental skills to be able to get my health habits under control and take away excuses from doctors. And as I was going through this stuff, getting stronger and stronger mentally, learning how to actually deal with things rather than just the physical side, actually learning how to deal with it mentally. Because since the physical component of my used to be my coping mechanism, I guess, was taken from me. And then eventually found, like I said, once I started getting healthier, I used these mental skills then to be able to continue my progress and go way past what anybody thought I'd be able to do. And eventually got into the Spartan racing as I started getting better and better physically, again, staying strong mentally, and then started doing Spartan races. I did my first one in 2023, September 2023. And then I did 10 last year, and I've already done 5 this year and about to do 3 more in end of April. So
Nice. That's awesome. Like, that's awesome, dude. Like, just, being able to kind of figure that out. And one of my thoughts here, just as you said, I went online and kind of started researching it yourself.
mm-hmm.
One of the things that I always find problematic for me, like looking up stuff online, is there's so much information.
Yeah.
And then there's information that contradicts like each other. Like how are you able to kind of, I guess, the process of that, kind of trial and error, like, what was really working, or what were you able to kind of, get a good beat on, like, that information as you're going in, like, well, without like kind of setting yourself back, I guess, as well with some of the info.
So there's a lot of setbacks, and there's a lot of ups and downs within there. So, a lot of people are like, how'd you say it's so strong? I was like, well, there's sometimes I did, and I just gave up for a month at a time where I would just stop trying. And then eventually I get something kick me up and I'd start trying again, doing more research and things. So coming from an analytical background, being a, prior military, and then now doing the government and intel analysis, I'm actually really good about trying to decipher things. So like I just basically pros cons. So I look up things, I see something that kind of matches some of my symptomology, and say, okay. And then I start just asking myself, what suggests that I do have this? And then what suggests that I don't? So rather than getting married to the idea that I have this issue, I would just say, okay, if I did, what would it look like? If I didn't, what would it look like? And just kind of say, okay, which one outweighed the other? And if I could dictate myself and go like, well, all the things that it says it wouldn't be outweigh the things that say I would, I could just discard that. When I couldn't do that, when I would say the list potential showed that I could have that, then I would go seek another doctor or somebody in that specialty to try to see, hey, can I get your opinion on this? But it's hard because sometimes you go into a doctor and say, I think I might have this. Some of them just completely dismiss you. Like that would happen constantly. Like they were just like, WebMD kind of thing, right? And I was like, no, I'm asking. I've done my due diligence. This is why I believe this. Can you just help me evaluate it and see if I'm wrong? Because I'm okay with being wrong. I want to find out what's actually the issue. But oftentimes they just want to throw medication at you. Go, well, here, take this to relieve this symptom. It's like, I don't want to relieve a symptom. I want to find what's wrong so that I don't have to continue taking medications so I can get better. And some of them just didn't give a shit. They're just like, oh, just, it's all mental, or take this pill and it'll go away. And it's like, well, that's not helping,
Yeah, I've ran into that, not that issue, but like kind of a similar thing. Many years ago, I couldn't sleep. And I've had a wacky sleep pattern throughout my life, but there was a point where I just could not get to sleep.
Yeah.
And I go to my doctor, and I'm letting him know, like, hey, doc, I can't sleep, dude. I'm really having some trouble. And the first thing he says to me is, I'm not giving you medication.
Yeah.
Like, well, good. I don't want medication.
Good.
I want help. I need to figure this out. And then it like really gave me no answers, nothing. I was like, all right, cool. I get to the next doctor. First thing he does is says, here's some Ambien. This is like when Ambien was like relatively new. So I didn't know anything. I was like, all right, whatever. I took one in a weird experience. I didn't sleepwalk or go on
Yeah,
a trip or anything to like DC or Annapolis. I stayed in the room. I actually
yeah,
fell down and just went to sleep on the floor. But after that, I was like, nope, we're not doing these anymore. This is a bad time. But it is weird when like you run into our physicians that it's just like, hey, I need your help, dude. Like something,
yeah,
please. At least like steer me in a direction,
yeah,
maybe. Eventually, when I told the second doctor, hey, these pills aren't the answer, he was like, all right, here, like go talk to a therapist. Like, here's a list. Okay. That, and then even they started trying to give me medication. I was like,
yeah,
don't want your pills. I
yeah,
just want
exactly.
to sleep. So
Yeah.
I get you. Um, but,
Did you
but yeah,
figure it out?
Um, I mean, not really. No. Like once I did get into therapy, though, because that was a long journey too. Because I went to three different therapists as well. But eventually, the one that I finally got settled with that kind of got me at least a little bit of like direction. I was sleeping better,
Hmm.
not as good as I would like, but at least I was able to like now kind of go through some steps and process of having a good nighttime routine
Hmm.
and kind of getting my body set for sleep, which I used to really do anyway, but it was like, okay, like little things like, okay, reading before bed. It's like
Hmm.
that tends to help most people. uh the problem I had was like, stimuli, the lights are on, TV's on, music and stuff like that. So it's like, we just got to disconnect all that. One of the big things that really helped me was like a sleep mask. Very simple.
Yeah.
Just a sleep mask, like blocking out like all the lights, like everything. Um, then I got a sleep mask that had like not earplugs, but like something to cover my ears.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's just like kind of like deprivation, like the tanks,
Yeah.
essentially, just like just shut everything out. So that's going a long way. I have my bouts on and off with sleep still, but when I know it's getting really really bad, I go right to that mask, put it on. And I mean, even last night after the UFC card, it's like, oh my god, put that on. It was like I couldn't have been more than like 5 minutes, if even. That I was just like out like a light, and slept pretty well.
Yeah. So I think I found that a lot of or sleep systems come to nervous system overload. So like that was actually one of the reasons I couldn't sleep very well either with those stuff because my nervous system was shutting down. It was just stimulated constantly. So a lot of times because we're listening to things all the time, constantly, like listening to music, things like that. We're not getting into nature. So there's always some kind of stimulation going on in your nervous system. A lot of people train their nervous system unknowingly. Um,
Mhm.
like even with like BJJ stuff like that for you guys, like you're probably training your nervous system so much, but you're not taking a break and letting it relax. Which then, as soon as you lay down, your muscles relax, but your nervous system goes, "Oh shit, now time's real." It's our time to come alive and be destimulated, but their destimulation for your nervous system kind of wakes you up mentally. So it's have a hard time to kind of get asleep. So that's why there's the deprivation. It takes away all the stimulus from your nervous system, which is why it would work. So getting a better nervous system decompression routine will probably get you better sleep.
Yeah, that's I used to train at nights, like the after work training and then going to like later evening training. With my
Hmm.
wife's work schedule, I can't train at night anymore, which is kind of a blessing because when I was training at night, I'd come home and I was wired. It
Yeah,
was like, okay, I get home at like 10:30 and it's like, all right, I need stuff to do. I keep like my body, I
yeah,
still got all this energy and
yeah.
getting rid of that, was a major thing. I still like Friday nights. I do the Friday night evening wrestling class,
Hmm.
and I'm home by 8 o'clock, and I record. But that all is kind of like recording is kind of a therapy for me. Get
Yeah.
the talk things out and relax a little bit, and then by the time it's all said and done, I go upstairs. My co-host, he leaves. I go upstairs and I'm like, oh, maybe I want to, catch up on, whatever happened in sports today. because really Friday I'm just detached from the world other
Yeah.
than, like I
Yeah.
go to the mats, but I can't like I'll turn on the TV and I can't even last 10 minutes. I'm like, oh, my body's like, it's like, it's time
Yeah.
to go, buddy. So,
Yep.
being detached, it does help me a lot.
Yeah.
Um, so as far as the mindset coaching,
Mhm.
as it comes about for you, because once you start figuring things out for yourself, and it's you're helping you now.
Yeah.
What was the driving force for you now to say, you know what, let me you know help others with this, because helping others is a big thing. And I always feel like, we always say we want to help people, we want to help others, but people say a lot of things,
Yeah.
but people don't do a lot of things. So, what drove you in that direction to do?
I think just because I saw how much of an impact it made for me. So again, growing up, the reason I was able to not have long-term issues with my, stuff with my dad, and how I was able to get over this stuff was because I processed everything physically. So, and I was lucky enough to have a bunch of like kind of older people I played basketball and stuff with, and they would let me get really rough. You know what I mean? Like, so we'd have like a little rough play effectively, just like let my energy out that way. And they would let me know really quick if I got too physical, right? Like, and we would just be able to like decompress that way, process the emotions, and then get through it. When I got my physical capabilities taken away because of all my health issues before we could figure it out, like slowly getting more and more taken away, I didn't have the ability to process those things, right? I didn't have the ability to actually cycle through the emotions correctly. So these mental skills helped me tremendously, give me that secondary tool set to be able to process things in a more appropriate manner. And so once I figured that out, and again, and being able to use these skills to lose weight, to do all these other things like just, better work, better relationships, things like that, there was no chance I could, keep it to myself. Also, one thing that I failed to talk about is kind of one thing that kind of really shifted when I really started figuring things out. I was in my closet one day, and I was having all those pains again. I was like, damn, I have another heart attack. Or not another, but I always felt like I basically had the symptoms of heart attack and stroke constantly. So I was like, man, I'm having a heart attack. I'm just going to lay here and die. Screw it. I'm done. I'm not even going to go to the hospital. I know they're going to tell me anyway. So I just said, hey, God, I don't really do this. I'm not a particularly religious person, but if you let me live through this, then, I'll help other people, and I'll figure this out and I'll help other people. So I'll live through it. And so that's kind of thing. I was like, I just got to keep that promise now. I figured it out. And now as I'm getting better, I just have to help other people learn how to gain these skills, because health and all these other stuff is just a skill set. Like, really, and if you don't have the skill set, then you think that you're going to continuously get worse and worse. But the reality is you only get worse and worse because you don't have the skill of being healthy, of being, mentally, physically, whatever.
Yeah, that's something I run into a lot with, friends sometimes. It's like there's this thought of like, I just don't know what to do. I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Or they're looking at like information that's, confirmation bias.
Yeah.
This is what I like, so I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
juicing. I'm just going to juice in I'm going to eat like no carbs, or whatever it is. It's like, this seems like this is going to help me lose weight. I'm going to, only eat, whatever it may be, salads all day, just lettuce all day. And it's like, okay, I mean, I don't know, that's not healthy though, in the sense of like all around. And but people like doing that. They're like, well, this is the thing that I know is going to get me the quick results, and or that's the one side, and the other side is just, again, they just don't know. They don't even know where to start.
Well, a lot of things wrong with that is it's not sustainable. But second, it's like then you get, confirmation bias, but also expert bias, right? You see all these people with titles and all this crap, like, oh, they did research and this and that. And it's like, but the reality is a lot of that research is garbage, just paid for by people trying to make money off of you, right? So the way I started looking at it is like, I started looking at all the commonalities and then started putting it against nature and said, okay, if I was thrown in the middle of the jungle, what would hold true? And the whole no carb thing is like, yeah, that's fine. Actually, you could survive. There's actually no essential carbohydrate. So you could live your life entirely without eating carbs. That'd be completely fine for most people. It's not necessarily necessary, right? Like, it's not that you can't have it, but there's no essential carbohydrate. Your body can make any of the sugars that it wants to from the proteins and fats. There are essential proteins. There are essential fats, though. So one thing that people go wrong is they go low fat. Well, low fat, your fats, actually, dietary fats produce your hormones. And there's a lot of vitamins and minerals that are fat soluble, meaning that if you don't eat them, if you don't consume fat with those items, usually salads, right, like have a lot of vitamins and minerals that have fat soluble, vitamin minerals in there. So that's why salad dressing is fatty, so that you can get the vitamins and minerals from it. But then people go low carb or low fat or no fat on the salad dressing. It's like, well, then you might as well not even eat the salad, right? So like there's so much misinformation on this stuff that then they actually harm themselves further because they're using bad data to begin with. It's like, you can have carbs if you want, but they should just be fillers. You should do the fats, prioritize fats and proteins, and then fill in with carbs if you need extra stuff. That's kind of what I do now. I eat a lot of fruit and meat, pretty much. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. When I am, on a good run, there's a lot of fruit, a lot of meat, stuff like that. But, when I have my moments, I love me a pastry. I've not seen a pastry I don't love.
Yeah, I don't do that stuff very much anymore because, again, my psoriasis turned into psoriatic arthritis, which then causes a lot of joint pain and all those different things, right? Mm-hmm. So when I have a lot of sugars and extra sugar, stuff like that, I suffer like, a lot of my issues start to come back. So I just avoid it. But there's not inherently anything wrong with that stuff per se, right? In the US, there's a little bit more wrong with it, but it's less to do with the actual product itself, but the quality of the products that are going into that thing. So if you make that stuff at home, typically it's going to be better for you anyway, long term, stuff like that. So it's nothing wrong with it. And, especially as much stuff as you're doing with the BJJ and everything, like sometimes you just need that extra fuel, and eating too many fats and proteins, like it's fine, but it fills you up so much that it's hard to get enough food intake with that and feel fine. So sometimes you do need to fill. It's fine to fill in with that, especially if you're really doing a bunch of stuff. But
yeah, I tend to, my big training is Friday and Saturday. Again, Friday is kind of like everything's kind of moving, and then I go into Saturday morning training. But like Saturday after training, two things happen. Like my body, it's not shutting down, but I'm like, come on, I need a nap. I just got thrashed for 2 hours. I need a little bit, like, let me sit down with my laptop, get my notes organized, close that up, and then I'll just sit there on the couch and just kind of look out the window. My kids playing outside, so so it's like kind of let my body rest. But then the other thing that happens too is like, all right, where's the pastry I need? And usually my wife bakes cookies at home. I try not to go overkill because I don't want to be that guy to eat all the cookies. So on the way home I might stop and grab a honey bun. That's my kryptonite. I see a honey bun and it's like, oh, you didn't tell me we're partying like this. But it's like, I think too, like when we're talking about the salads here and the dressings, a memory flashed in my head of like growing up seeing fat-free salad dressings, and like now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yeah, that is such a silly thing. People think, oh, I'm being healthy, I'm having my fat-free salad dressing on my salad. It's like, all right, I guess.
Yep, you just wasted the salad.
Now
you can offset that a little bit. You put like eggs, like egg yolks in there, and then or avocado, something like that, because they have the healthy fats in there too. But when they do the complete fat-free, there's nothing fatty in there, then you're not getting all the nutrients from it. Actually getting about half of it. So
yeah, I remember as I got older and felt like, hey, I'm being mature, I'm eating salads too. And I was seeing salads with like egg, hard-boiled eggs, like mixed into them, and avocado, and I was like, that's different. Like that's that changed the whole game for me with having a salad. I was like,
Yeah.
I want more salads because it's not just tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuce and carrots and croutons. It's like I can have like a hard-boiled egg and I have like
Yep.
avocado and there's some a little bit of cheese in it. So it's like, okay, this is
Yeah.
fine. The cheese gets a little weird for me sometimes, but I don't shy away from it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
maybe on a Thursday.
Yeah.
Uh, so uh uh as far as the mindset coaching in individuals, what are some things that you've seen like with folks that kind of limits them, like that they limit themselves just with certain thoughts and like feelings going into it that it just sets them back, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to is like as we grow up, we don't even realize that we're building other people's belief systems and we're calling on our beliefs. And most people never question what they quote unquote believe because they're taught it from their parents, from school, from media, from TV shows, whatever. And then they believe it's true and then they never question it. So oftentimes then it turns into negative self-talk or doubting or those different things. And then when you don't ever just confront it, then you just continue believing it. So really just starting with awareness is the big thing. Is like, when are you even aware of what you're saying to yourself, how your body reacts to different things? Like when you're starting to lose control, what is your attention going to? What's your focus on? How's your self-talk, your body language, all these different things. And then just start going, okay, then start questioning that. Go like, well, where did that come from? Like, when did you start thinking that way? Like, or what is the emotion or sensation that comes up when you're either avoiding that or going towards that, right? Because kind of a side step is the habit loop. What the habit loop is. So you have like the trigger, the stimulus, and then you have the response, and then you have like a reward, right? Well, there's actually a second step. Another second step is those are 4 step processes. It's the stimulus or the trigger or whatever that sets the thing off, and then there's a desire or crap. I always forget the word right when I'm looking for it. Again, need basically, and then there's the response. So, for instance, how this came up for me one time, I was about a year ago. I was at my nephew's graduation, and I don't really do sweets anymore. But they brought out cupcakes, and for some reason, I was like, I couldn't stop craving them. I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, I really never crave this stuff, but for some reason, like I really wanted it. And that's what it's a craving, actually. It's a craving. So I was like, I really, really want this. And I was like, I don't know why. And everybody's even saying like they looked good, but they didn't taste that good. But I just couldn't get over it. So I was like, oh, maybe I just need some fruit or something. So I was eating some fruit and I was just trying to eat some like meat and things. And I kind of was like, maybe I'm just hungry. And so I started texting my wife because she wasn't there. And as I was texting her about it, I was kind of joking around about it because it looked like something that she used to make. She makes really good cupcakes. So it looked like something she made. And I realized in the moment that what I was craving was her attention and, and affection or whatever, right? Like intimacy with my wife, So as I was texting with her and talking with her, that fulfilled that craving. So the desire I felt inside was the intimacy with my spouse. And that's why what triggered it was I was craving the cupcakes because it wasn't really the cupcakes that was the outside product, but there was an internal craving of a feeling that I was trying to seek. So just kind of becoming aware of those things and going like, okay, it's probably not the item. The item's fulfilling what I believe is a need, a feeling, a desire, a sensation. And that item is fulfilling that in some way. Whether that's a good or bad item long term, doesn't really matter because it's filling some need your body has. So if you can figure out what that need is, you can replace it with a better habit or response or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting that, just kind of figuring that out and kind of coming to that conclusion because, I don't, most folks wouldn't figure that. It's like, you see the cupcake, they're craving the cupcake, go get the cupcake. And I know I've had those ones where it's like, I want something, pizza. I want some pizza. And I get the pizza, that mouth pleasure. It's like, oh, get it. And then it's like, I don't really feel fulfilled. Yeah. It's like,
so Pete, that's an interesting one. So here it is, right? So many people around society today teach you to use food as a comfort mechanism, right? So when somebody dies, whether they either, funeral, whatever, they bring food over, all those different things. But you don't even realize that you've been trained your entire life to crave pizza. So think about every birthday party you went to had pizza and cake, right? So it's like you actually associate all these positive emotions with pizza and cake. So therefore you constantly crave it, but it doesn't really fulfill you because there's really not much in it that's necessarily nutritionally valuable for you all the time, depending on what you put on top of it. But it's not necessarily always something nutritionally valuable to you. So your body doesn't get fulfilled because it's still missing some item that it actually needs nutritionally. But emotionally, you got whatever fulfilled because you're craving that sensation of happiness or whatever. But then your body's going, man, I didn't get the nutrients I needed though. So it's still telling you you're hungry because it didn't get satisfied with what it needed to process whatever's going on. So it's kind of like that's, the balance of why people think they're still hungry is because your body still needs something. You didn't give it to it every year, your nutrition. You fulfilled your emotional need by eating whatever it was, but you didn't fill your nutritional need. So there's like a disconnect.
Yeah, I again, love pastries, love pizza. I'm a fat boy, but there are those moments though when I'll give in, and afterward I feel I don't want to say gross, but I feel just like unfulfilled. And
Right.
sometimes what helps with a lot of this is if I do train and then I have it, there's kind of like, okay, I feel, I got something combined there worked for me because it's, I can't have it before training though. Because if I eat any junk before training, like yesterday, I had a donut before training and I felt the sugar crash hit me mid roll. And I was like, oh no, this is about to be a bad time. It wasn't that bad, but I still felt like I felt that crash, but I recovered. But having any junk beforehand, I definitely know is a no-no. But there's sometimes after I train, again, I have some pizza, and I guess it's after exerting the energy and everything, and then kind of replenishing to some degree, at least getting salts in you and whatnot. But if I just have it by itself, it feels like a waste, to some degree.
See right there, just to play with you a little bit there is the language you're using around it, right? Like you're calling it junk, you're saying you have to earn it, things like that. That's typically what people go wrong is they start thinking this way, right? They think they have to earn it by doing X, Y, or Z. They call it junk, they call it this stuff. But if you start changing the way you think of food and how you talk about food, it's like, was it nutritionally necessary, right? And sometimes when you have a lot of exertion, you just need calories, right? Like to like, if there's nothing else, sometimes you just need the calories. That's fine. It's not really good or bad. It's just, is it optimal for your nutritional longevity, right? So it's like, okay, well, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's like, but if you have no other options and you're low on energy, things like that, sometimes you need to do it. It's just a matter of like, okay, is it going to help me nutritionally in the long term? Can I make better choices? Can I plan better? Things like that. So rather than calling it junk food, right? It's not nutritionally, it's not the best nutritional choice, but if it's necessary to replenish something, sometimes it's there. So like that's what, you got to play with the words there. And it seems, a little bit ticky-tack, right? But that's kind of the point. It's like we start using these words and we don't even realize that we're using these words around everything in our lives. Then all of a sudden we're associating it with like a negative and evil, right? But it's not really necessarily evil or bad. Those are labels that we put on things. It's either going to benefit us or it's not. It's not good or bad. It's either going to nutritionally benefit us or it's going to nutritionally just kind of, satisfy something. So if we start to think of it in that terms, it becomes a little bit better to be, or easier than to make different choices or plan different ways,
Yeah. Like I do feel like, at least like with the pizza, there is some benefit from it.
Yeah.
When I go and have, a honey bun afterward, it's like, there's no benefit there. It's just, I wanted a honey bun. But again, it's like, as you burn that energy, like you said earlier, it's kind of, you're refueling, the calories are, helping refuel you. But there is a point sometimes where I'm just like, it's like can't help it. I got to have that honey bun. The pizza's more of a like, you know what? It's fine. Like I can justify the pizza. There are times where I'm just like, oh man, like
So
because I also, I'm sorry.
challenge you there, right? Like you don't need to justify it. Like what does pizza provide? There's some proteins there, right? Especially depending on the
Yeah,
cheese they use. There's proteins in there. There's fats. There's carbs, right? So it's still replenishing you in some way. If you
yeah,
put certain meats on there, right, you get more protein, which is going to be beneficial to you. So it's still replenishing you nutritionally. So it's not necessarily net negative. Usually it's how they make it. It's the problem, right? So and same thing with the honey bun, like right. If you're craving it after training, well, what's in honey buns? There's a lot of fat in that stuff, right? So you're again, and especially the training you're doing, right? It's a lot of nervous system stuff, a lot of hormonal stuff. So you're replacing the fat. So could you make a better choice to get fats in your system to help rebuild those hormones? Probably, but if that's what you're craving is the fat in it, right? So because your body needs the fats, you could make a better, healthier fat choice, but that's what you're needing, right? So it's just not necessarily good or bad. It's not negative. It's just you're replenishing something for your system. It's just a matter of how you're getting it.
yeah. Like with the honey bun, the one thing I do think becomes a slippery slope for me though too is it starts as one
Yeah.
and then it
Well,
becomes and
so that's again back to the nutritionally your body the availability, right? So like you're fulfilling a crappy fat, right? So like your body needs those fats. So it
mhm,
once it gets a little bit of it, it's not getting the best fat, so it needs more, right? And then it's not getting those other nutrients, so it's like telling you, hey, there's still something missing. That's why it keeps becoming more and more and more because your body's going like, well, we got a little bit of what we needed, but there's more we need there. So it's actually just seeking that additional nutrients, which is why it becomes a slippery slope, right? So that's
mhm.
why it's really just your body telling you, hey, there's something missing here still. Like, let me, so if you pair that with something else that can balance out that nutritional deficiency, you probably would stop at one.
Yeah. Well, there have been times after training too, I'll come home and my wife asks me, you want anything to eat? Because a lot of times too in the past, is I have a colostomy bag and that kind of messes with uh, me eating after strenuous training sometimes.
Hmm.
So sometimes I'm like, I need to take some time, but usually within that time, it's like, hey, let's, get a burger or something. It's like, there are times that, I do want like, something more protein heavy after
Yeah.
training, but that initial snap reaction is, yeah, let's go get those sweets because they're
Yeah.
good.
It
Uh,
happens.
yeah. And that's the thing too. It's like I don't look at it as a complete like failure or anything because it's one thing if I'm just waking up, go to the mall, go get a honey bun, you know, go home, sit down, watch Cagney and Lacey, and then read some comic books. It's like I'm not really doing anything versus like driving my body crazy and then like okay yeah I need those things. So there are times where in my brain I'm kind of looking at my activity too. If I've
Yeah.
just been sitting around, there's no sense in eating a whole box of Swiss cake rolls. Like my body wants it, but I'm like, huh. But
Yeah.
also my body does kind of reject it too. After
Yeah.
a couple of them, I'm like, so oh, like just too much sugar. I start feeling that overload. I feel
Yeah.
crappy, and then I end up, drinking a lot of water. Then the kind of like feel like I'm diluting it or flushing it. So
Yeah.
and it's just a cycle.
Yeah.
Um, so like how would you help someone who's got kind of like a because like a mental like blockade, like as you work with them and you're making progress, but they just have kind of like there's just something they can't get through for whatever reason, just how they might be viewing a situation or interpreting it, or people around them even just kind of uh manipulating, information in their mind too. How would you help an individual kind of see it clearer, I guess?
Yeah. So diving into some of these like deeper questions, right? Like, I'll start asking them like, "Hey, what's that feeling and sensation?" Right. So I'll just say, what are you seeking in that moment? Like, and the surface level answer is never the right answer, right? Because like people don't want to dive deeper. So it's like you'll start just questioning them, like say like, well, I just want to, eat or whatever, right? So then you just dive into like, okay, but what are you feeling when you eat that? Like, right, like, what immediately comes up, and you start like asking different questions, and then you go, okay, just don't even think though, just whatever craziness comes to mind. So like, say for instance there's like a fear that's like, okay, the first thing that pops to your mind without thinking, like, what is, when you say I fear this, what is the first crazy thing that comes to your mind? And it'll be something really kind of, they're like, oh, that seems stupid, and they just say it, right? And it's like, okay, well, let's work with that. So you then pull that stuff like that out. So for instance, I was working with somebody, and they were going to have a conversation with their boss about a raise, right? Or kind of 1 year evaluation, and talk about salary increase, thing like that. And they just got done telling me about how much their boss praised them and basically asked them to take on like a senior level, more senior position and do all these different things. And then they were like, but I'm afraid to ask for more money because what if they say no, or all these different things? And I go, okay. So I just started questioning them more and more. And then it just kind of started coming out. I was like, hey, because I used to work with them. I was like, hey, when this person, is like, when we first started working together, you went to this person pretty easily and asked for more money, and it seemed like no problem, right? And it's like, it was a male. And I was like, why is it that you had less problem asking him, and the woman you're talking to now, you feel like, who just give you a bunch of praise, by the way, why is it that, is there somewhere else in your life that you have easier time with male than female? And it turned out that their mom was harder on them than their dad. So like they always felt like they couldn't like satisfy their mom, I guess. Like, they were never like good enough for their mom. So I was like, well, is it probably just a dominant female figure in your life, or somebody, authoritative figure, a female figure is setting it back? I was like, now that we understand that, now you have a different choice to make. As soon as that feeling comes up, you can go, oh, this is just an authoritative figure in my life, female figure in my life. I can choose to act differently. So that's what they did. And they ended up getting a pretty sizable raise. So in less than a year, they went from, they basically more than doubled their salary, just by understanding this and being able to like voice their opinion about what they wanted. And it was just understanding this, that like, oh, that was just like limiting belief of this female figure, the authoritative figure. I can't satisfy them no matter what I do. And it's like, well, do you have evidence that that's true? And then when they really think about it, they go, well, I guess not, right? Like, because you just told me for the last 15 minutes how much they praised you. So I actually have evidence to the contrary, way more than you could probably come up with to the positive, right? So it's like, so we just disproved that right there. And they were like, oh, okay. So I've done that with a couple of different people now since then. Is, another guy was like, he just wanted to come home and sit down after, whatever, and like watch TV after he did something positive, right? And I was like, okay, where else have you had that in your life? And they're like, well, I guess when I was younger, when I'd come home, my mom would always praise me, and then I would just go watch TV, do whatever. I was like, oh, okay, so you're seeking validation from, again, your female figure in your life to validate the fact that you did something good, and now you're satisfied with just being good because you were praised for that and never had to have a secondary action. I was like, but the thing is just because you had success one time doesn't mean that you're going to have success the next time. So, it's fine to accept that you did something good. It's like, but it's not over, right? Like you have to re-earn it tomorrow now. Like, celebrate in the moment, but then re-earn it tomorrow. And he's like, oh, okay. So then he started doing that more and more. And all of a sudden now going to the gym and doing all those different things became a lot easier and easier, because now he's not looking for that validation of, oh, I did something good, now it's time to stop. It's like, no, I did something good, I can celebrate that. Now let's on to the next goal.
I find that interesting that it's just like that little shift.
Yeah.
How you view things that makes the difference.
Yeah. And that's why I was pushing a little bit on the language, right? Because it's all about the language. If you don't catch those small language things, that's usually where it comes up. Is just like there's something they say, So a really good one, an easy way to think about this is like when people say money's the root of all evil. Well, no, it's not. There's people who have a lot of money do a lot of good. There's also people who have a lot of money do a lot of bad. All money does is amplify your true character, right? So, but we think that money is the root of all evil because we see more often the bad people doing things with a lot of money. But that's just because the good people doing good with money don't want the praise. They're doing it for the right reasons. So you don't see them, right? So then people associate that with the wrong things. And you start saying that, though, now you're afraid to go make more money. But you can do more good in the world when you have the ability to do that with funds, right? So you've actually been counterproductive because of the language we use around money, for instance, for this instance. But, the same thing goes for a lot of things in our life, though.
Yeah. Actually, even with that comparison there, I just thought about, because I'm a comic book nerd. And, one of the things they, point out with Captain America and getting the super soldier serum, point out that, he was already a good dude.
Yeah.
And getting the serum amplified, the goodness in him, whereas, you give that serum to someone not so good.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And I think about that with martial arts as well.
Yeah.
Because we talk about, jiu-jitsu, it'll humble the bully and it'll make them not want to be a bully. And I would say in a lot of cases that is true. But then you have cases like War Machine, John, I think, Copenhagen. He had, just gone on to Joe Rogan and, an instance. And, I'm listening to a story. It's like, martial arts helped this dude turn around, and this is kind of at the beginning of my jiu-jitsu journey. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this is amazing. And then 3 weeks later, he goes and attacks his ex-girlfriend. Yeah. And then that's where kind of that thing clicked, where it's like, it's not necessarily, because you're doing this thing that's making you good, or bad. It's like, whatever's there is already there.
Yeah.
It's just like, like with the whole money thing, people say, well, if you have poor spending habits when you're poor, money's not going to fix those spending habits. You're just going to buy more dumb stuff.
Yeah. Pretty much.
So yeah, but the way we word things or, interpret them is huge. Because even just think about that with myself, like I always think about conversations with my grandfather. Like my grandfather, I think of him as the most brilliant person I know. And whenever I would sit down and have conversations with him, there's always this weird feeling. Like I don't, because I just always feel like, and I'm no dummy by any means, but I just feel like as I'm talking to him, I'm like thinking like he's probably thinking every word that comes out of my mouth is the dumbest thing he's ever heard. And it's not, but I put that on myself. That's like, I just recently had my grandma on the podcast a few months back and I wanted to have him on. And there's this intimidation there where I'm like, I'm afraid to talk to this dude. Like, I don't know, like, and it would be like this. I just want to hear your story, but there is that, those things that we put in ourselves to block us from whatever it is. And it's just figuring out how to look at it differently. So,
yeah. I think a lot of people have that misconception that they need to be the smartest person in the room to feel welcome. But the smartest person in the room is the person who actually knows they're not the smartest person in the room at the end of the day. They prepare themselves to be that way, to be able to answer questions and things like that. So and in fact, really is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? Because you're not going to grow as much as you possibly could. So you should try to be towards the middle or the bottom so that you can learn the most. So, if you reframe that with your grandpa, it's like that, you don't have to, he's not looking for you to be the most intelligent person. He's looking to share his wisdom with you. right? So all you have to be is open to listening to it and hearing it and taking it and absorbing it so that you can pass it on too. Because eventually he won't be here to be able to pass it on. So he needs to teach you so that you can pass it on, right? So if you think about it in terms of that, it's like, hey, the intimidation's gone. I just have to absorb his knowledge. That's it. Like I need him to be the smarter than me so that he can teach me, right? And I'm gonna accept that, and I love him for that.
Yeah, it's funny because it's only with my grandfather that I have that issue. Because I go into any other room, I always feel like my superpower is just being me, just being authentic. No matter what weird thing I might say, it's this is Dante. It's me. Whether I'm trying to make someone feel comfortable, or whether I'm just trying to feel like my place is there. I'm just being me though. It's not, but when it comes to my grandfather, it's like as soon as I walk to my grandparents' house, I always feel like anything I say
I'm
is just like
I'm guessing he's just more
wow.
stoic person, doesn't react.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
It's
the
probably
goals
his
that
reactions.
I always feel good when I can get my grandma to laugh.
Yep.
If I get my grandma to laugh, that's like my day is good. If I get her to laugh at 10 o'clock in the morning, I don't care what happens the rest of the day. It was a good day. I got grandma to laugh. And I have a friend who's similar in that way, where he's stoic. He's relatively stoic, and I can get him to laugh. I feel pretty good. But with my grandfather, it's like there's no reaction out of most things. And I'm just like, and it's always in my head, like, how do I crack this wall? Like, I need to get a reaction out of this guy. Do I need to knock a plate onto the floor to get him to react? Like throw eggs at the window, and he's older now, and he's not as physical as he used to be. So like we'd go for walks in the past, and like not even necessarily talk on those walks, but just kind of go for walks together, and take in nature. And now he can't do that, and it's almost like I feel this weird like, oh, what do we do now? Like we can talk, but then what? And he's told me before, it's like when I once did ask him to come on to the show, he was like, well, I'm not a big talker. And I was like, well, neither am I, but we're going to figure it out. And I think that did set me back though, because I took that as kind of a mini rejection.
Yeah.
He didn't say no, but it was kind of like a warning, like, hey, I'm not a big talker. And in my mind, I was like, damn it, he just said no. Meanwhile, really, he's just like, look, I'll do it, but you're gonna have to really pull the info out of me, and I don't know, maybe I could still get him. That I think I just sneak up on him one day with the microphone. Hey, what you got to say now?
You just got to find the topic that he really wants, like he likes talking about. Like there's probably some topic that he really wants to share his opinion on.
Yeah. He's sitting around family dinners, from time to time when he does speak. Is like now as I'm looking back on, it's like all the family gatherings, all the events, he observes. He just sits back and observes, and it's like he's not mingling or nothing, but he's taking in all this info. It's like, okay, well, but hey, like
he's that old school provider protector, right? Where he's like he's always in observation mode because he's always got to be able to be aware of what's his surroundings to be able to help other people. That's a very masculine trait, right? So that's something we strive to. It's hard to crack though, because we're because we're always trying to like take over that role, So
that's something I look at like with him, because my grandparents raised me, and I remember always seeing him just do certain things like he did the bulk of the cooking in the house.
Yeah.
So watching how he handled his kitchen. And then when I moved out, I noticed I was doing the same things. It's like seeing that I picked up, these little traits, but the one trait I didn't pick up is like, again, I go in a room and I observe, but I'm also like, I'm looking for the joke. I'm looking to get a laugh sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, whereas he's not doing that. I'm like, like I want to stay authentically me, but I need a little bit of that stoicism. Just give me a touch. But hey, it's such as life. I'll save the rest of that for my therapist.
No, I'm sure he's extremely proud of you for being you, right? That's what, at the end of the day, people like that's what they want. They want you to be better than them in a lot of ways. So you're clearly doing well in terms of leading and things like that. So, I'm sure he's extremely proud of you and wants you to be you, not him. You got to be the best version of you, not the best version of him.
What's funny is that he has a number of times, much like the coworker talking about getting praise. Like my grandfather does praise me.
Yeah.
And he'll always tell me, he's like, I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of the man you've become. I'm proud of the husband you've become, the father you've become. And I'm like, I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. And but then there's still that part of me that feels like, oh man, I'm a, class A like mess up here, man. Like, in the meanwhile, I'm not messing anything up.
Right.
I'm doing, I'm doing what I feel are the right things. But then I look at my grandfather and I always feel like, I think he thinks I'm messing up. Meanwhile, he's like, Jake, I'm very proud of you. Like, are you sure? Like, give me a hug. Give me a hug. Man, like, a hug is going to tell me that you're proud of me. And then he does. He does give me a hug. And I'm like, oh, all right. Like, I got to take that back to my therapist too. Hey, my grandfather hugged me last week. I don't need you anymore.
Sounds like a good man.
I believe so. Like I said, he's brilliant and just, hey, he raised me. So that's the guy that I look at where it's like things got hard and it's like, let me turn to him, even though I knew I would get in, or I felt like I would get in trouble. And I guess maybe those traits pass to me with my daughter when she feels like she's about to get in trouble. I'm like, kid, like, you're not in trouble. I'm not mad.
Yeah.
Like, if something goes awry, come tell me. Like, we're going to fix this together. I'm not going to, like, she spilled sweet and sour sauce the other day. And she started crying. And I was like, whoa, what are we doing? Like, here, like, let's just clean this up. That's all. It's not a big deal. Like, and, so I guess that's maybe that's younger me. And, I'm doing the grandfather role. So it all comes out in the wash, Kevin.
Yep.
Like, we figured it out. When it comes to vulnerability and people just feeling vulnerable, like, what role does that play in just kind of building character, I guess, with individuals and kind of discussing that with them?
So oftentimes it's like, I think what people are afraid of with what the word vulnerability is they're more concerned that somebody's going to find something out and use it against them, right? So I don't really like the term safe space and then not being vulnerable, things like that. Like that, to me, that just seems like it's just unnecessary, right? Like, so I try to set the stage and let them know, like, hey, I'm not here to try to use anything against you. Like, I'm here. My role is to help you and to understand things. And truthfully is, people who are afraid of being vulnerable, if your enemy really wanted to do something against you, they're going to figure it out anyway, right? So like, you're really not guarding against anything. You're actually hurting yourself more in the long run because you're not willing to find your weak spots to safeguard against them, or I should say build up strengths in those skills or in those areas. And so you're harming yourself further by not getting the skill set you need to strengthen that area. So we want to be guarded, but at the end of the day, we're harming ourselves further. So I just kind of like let them know, it's like, hey, by doing this, you're actually just making the problem continuously worse. The only way to accomplish the task of learning the skill or getting over it is to address it and learn how to properly just process that emotion in real time, not fight against the reality of it, and then just learn the skill, right? Because it's all just a skill. And the more you try to suppress that emotion long term, right? Like, because sometimes in the moment you actually have to suppress it, right? Like, but then you just process it later. A good example is, have you ever seen those images of or the videos of like the deer or whatever, or the antelope in like Africa? They're like, there's one specifically about they got caught by a cheetah, and then the cheetah got scared off, and then all of a sudden you see the antelope kind of wake up and start violently shaking, and then just stands up and gets right. That's it, processing everything right then, right? In the moment, when it was in the mouth, it just shut its body down and it went limp. it couldn't do anything about that, right? It had to suppress the emotion of being fearful, whatever. It just kind of gave in. Once it felt safe, then, and all of a sudden it processed all the emotions, violently shook, let it get out of its body, and then got up and went about its life. Well, that's what I used to do as a child, through my physical activity, right? Being, violent almost, like in a safe space. Again, not really safe, but like in an environment where people were allowing me to do that in a proper position. But when I lost my physical capabilities to be able to get it out that way, I didn't have another skill. So you just have to learn that secondary skill set of like being able to process that emotion properly, not suppress it long term, maybe in the moment, but like being able to then go back and go like, hey, I need to feel that real quick. Let it really feel sad, and then understand that the sadness will go away once I understand it, and then I can move on. So just kind of going through that. And again, because I'm so open and I just, I put out a lot of stuff about myself and things that I've struggled with. I think that makes people feel more comfortable telling me these things too, because I have no desire to harm other people in that route. Right. So it's like, look, if we end up not working out together, then that's fine. I don't really care. Like, that's not my problem. That's going to be your problem long term, because you're not, I actually think I can help you. And if you choose not to take my help, I don't need to go and try to harm you. Because I have no desire for that, because there's dozens of other people, hundreds of other people, thousands of other people I can just focus my attention on to help. So like, I have no desire. I don't really hate. I don't even, it's pointless to hate, for me. If I don't like you that much, why would I waste that much time thinking about you, right? Like, there's no point in me hating anything, because then I have to put more time and energy into you. If I really dislike you that much, there's so many other things I could put time and energy into. There's no point in hating, right? So like, I think for me, that's what it comes down to, is just letting people understand that. And then usually just lets people go, okay, well, this guy's clearly not trying to harm me in any way. So
There's a job I used to have. I worked in a warehouse, and we would have temps come through, temporary employees come through. And there's a set of employees that they stuck around for a while.
Yeah.
And I remember there's this one young man. And again, when I'm in a room, I try to let people know, like, hey, what you see is what you get. I'm not gonna, tell you that, I like Public Enemy. Meanwhile, I don't. You ask me if I like Public Enemy, I'm like,
yeah,
I don't hate them, but
yeah.
it's like, but I'm not playing them tonight. I'm not listening to them right now. So no.
Yeah.
But this one young man, he and I were talking, and one thing that I thought about, kind of looking back on it, is like, as we're talking, he, initially was kind of this guarded young man. He was silly but guarded,
Yeah.
And as I would get sillier and just talk more and more about, like, just me, and like, just revealing stuff, I guess, if you will, he'd start telling me the story about how he wet the bed until, like, a later age, and like making kind of a joke with it, and like we're laughing about it. And I thought about it, I was like, that's a wild, I don't know how we got here, but
Yeah.
okay, but then I thought about, as you're talking about, just kind of being open about yourself, and like, sharing, it's like that is a thing, where you're open about yourself, and you're telling, and then people feel comfortable. It's like, well, I got something to tell too. Yeah, I wet the bed until I was like 14 or 15. I was like, okay, I'm not sure how we got there, but and I didn't, like, try to make him feel bad about it, because that's a thing that he's sharing. It's like, I did ask him. I was like, okay, that's interesting. How do we get here, dude? And we kind of still, like, made joke of it, but that's one of those things that I do find interesting, is being open and kind of almost leading that charge.
Yeah.
It's like, you're open and others feel that comfort.
Yeah. Something that came out to me when you said we're talking about that is I guess people, like, when we're discussing things like that, we're being open to with people, is they no longer think that we're going to judge them for things, right? So like that's like when I'm talking to people, I guess that's what thing is like one of my big things is like I don't want you to judge anything, right? So like when I said talking about the terminology and the language we're using, it's like, no, I don't need to judge the action. I need to understand it, right? So it's like I need you to stop judging it too, because if you're judging it as good or bad, you've already determined, right? Like some morality to it. It's like, but we need to detach from the morality of it and say, why is it happening, right? Because people use like word I shouldn't or I should, or right. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have, but you did. So let's understand that rather than judging the outcome. Let's reverse and go like, if it were to have worked out, what would that look like? And let's, next time let's rehearse that. And then next time you don't have that skill, right? So it's like, I guess, lack of judgment within there. So like when you're talking to this guy, you're just talking about, right? Like he could tell you weren't going to judge him based off of this, like the action or whatever. So that, to me, that's another thing, I guess, would be that.
Sure. Because I did feel kind of like, okay, well, like he felt that comfortable, and because I felt comfortable, because I tend to go into situations like my buddy, he and I, when we co-host our other podcasts, and the same question comes up. I want to say every 5 episodes. Like at the end of the night, the questions we do our questions at the end. He's like, what's your most embarrassing moment? I was like, I don't know that I necessarily have an embarrassing moment. I just don't care. Like I care, but it's like, I know I'm human. I'm going to make a mistake. Like I trip and fall. I embrace that. Like, oh man, I almost fell and died there, guys. Like, and I keep walking. But I think, with talking with this individual at work, as I'm open up and just talk about things, I'm very open about having colostomy. And I think that was one of the things, like, he didn't even know what that was. I was like, well, what? I started explaining it. And I think, open up to something that to him seemed like that's a big deal. So it's like, okay, well, he feels, comfortable with me to tell me this. So I feel comfortable. I can tell him stuff because, like I'm not judging him. He's not judging me. It's like, and my whole thing with judging is like, I don't have time to judge anybody. I got stuff to do. Like I got podcasts to edit. I got movies to watch to do the other podcasts. I can't be judging people. Like, let's just have a good time and talk.
Yeah.
But that's I guess that is, like you said, like kind of the words that we use to determine how we move forward with things. Because I never really look at it as judging. I just look at it as, talking to people, learn about people. What makes you like, why did that happen? Like, how do you feel after that? To better understand, this person that now I'm having a conversation with, who may become a friend later.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to is, with the judgments is people just fighting reality, right? It's like, it's all perception thing. That's why, like, you and me can see the same incident and perceive it 2 different ways, right? A way I like to describe this is like, say I walk up, right, and I punch you in the face. Would you be mad? Probably, right? Yeah. Well, if I give you the context that we're in the middle of a ring, though, would you be as mad?
I mean, a little bit. Like, I want to punch you.
Right. Well, we're boxing, right? So that's the expectation. Yeah. So you're no longer mad. It's strategic, right? So it's like when you change the perception of what the thing was, right? It wasn't the item of me punching you. It was the unexpected, result of you walking up to me. But when I put the context of we're fighting, right? Like, we're no longer mad about the situation. Now we're being strategic about it. So it's all about the perception of it, right? So again, that's the judgment initially of like, well, you better not, right? Well, you don't know the rest of the context, right? So like, yes, I shouldn't walk up to somebody on the street and just punch them, right? But again, it's the perception of what's going on. Did you take in the full context, or did you just put your idea of what should or shouldn't have happened in, what was right or wrong or whatever, without taking in the rest of the context of, hey, this person was trying to chase down a criminal, or maybe they were on the way to the hospital that, because their child is being born or somebody just died or whatever, right? Like there's other things that we just don't understand. We just see the outside, our own perception of things. So if we stop judging things and kind of look at it and go like, okay, well, like, how do I just respond to this rather than react to what I think happened?
Yeah, that's conversations that we have on our other podcast. It's what you perceive versus what we just had a big back and forth about in basketball. It's like what one town might perceive is like, well, these people love this one player like more than any player has ever been loved in history. It's like, dude, like we're in Baltimore. I don't know if you understand how much Cal Ripken meant to Baltimore. Like, it's not even close. But and he says like, you know what, you're free to feel that way, but I'm going to say you're wrong. I was like, you can say I'm wrong, but I just know when I was in Delaware, I felt that Cal Ripken love all the way in Delaware. Yep. So, but it's like, there's a certain point in the conversation where you both have to kind of, understand that, hey, we're both seeing this from a different point of view, and neither one is wrong. That's just a tough thing sometimes.
From that perspective, right? So like if they don't really care about baseball, maybe they didn't know it, but maybe they're football player, football centric. So they're like, oh no, everybody loves Ray Lewis or, Terrell Suggs or whoever, right? It's like, well, again, from your perspective, but all the baseball people, the people who enjoyed baseball, maybe they did feel that about Cal Ripken, right? Like, and sure they did. So yeah, it's like this, like you said, the perception of it's like, well, you're looking at it from the lens of what you're interested in, not the kind of concept of what other people might be too.
Yeah. I think eventually, we did kind of come to that understanding of like, we're seeing it from two different angles here.
Yeah.
It was like, and I mean, even, kind of given the dates that we're using, he was like, well, baseball isn't a big thing in this area. It's like, well, during that time, baseball is all Baltimore had at that time. So it's not that, but eventually we did kind of get to that midpoint of like, look, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Plus the streak and all that stuff. Yeah, that was huge. That was national coverage, right? So you had all that stuff going on.
And I think, even from my perspective with the national coverage of the streak, I think that kind of amplified my thought on it as well, though. Yeah. It was like, that was national coverage. So it meant a whole lot more. But, eventually, you get to a point where like, look, we understand that you're looking at it from this angle. I'm looking at it from this angle. Neither one of us is really wrong. Neither one of us is, probably exactly right. But, that's how conversation typically should work. It's just like, you're sharing your viewpoints and understandings. But, sometimes you get people that want to be so right that it makes their stomach hurt.
Yeah, I've been there. We've all been there, right?
I think I'm there still sometimes, like, because I'm originally from Detroit. So it's like when you say who's the greatest running back in the history, I'm like Barry Sanders. It's like, and I'm not wrong. It's like, I mean, you're not necessarily right. Like, I am right in my perspective.
Yeah,
I'm right. But, in reality, when you think about things logically, it's like, well, there's no right or wrong answer. Sometimes that's just the case. There's, a lot of things where there isn't a right or wrong. If you say, what colors, this microphone, had, no, it's black. Okay. I guess we can agree on that. My sweatshirt's black. We can agree on these things. But, but then when there's like, the opinion that comes into play, like what you see, what you perceive, and it's like, might not always be the case, but at least if you can make a civil conversation out of it, then that's where we have a good time.
Yeah.
I want to, I guess, touch back on the Spartan race real quick with you, because I'm familiar with it in the sense of like, I see the advertisements on social media and things like that. And I have a couple of friends who've done them actually, but I never really, conversed about it. So, I guess I want to ask you, like, as you got into that, and you said 2023 is when you started.
Yeah, so I did my first one. Yeah.
And then last year you did 10 of them. So with doing the Sparta race and just, you know, embracing that, um like how did that really like doing 10 last year just sounds like, because I'm not sure how it works. Like it's like that sounds like a lot. Like how do they work? Like how often are they done? Like, you know, do they come to your area, or are you traveling to do these things? What goes into it?
Yeah, so it's an obstacle course race. So it's mostly usually in some mountain range or something, right? Some hills or woods and stuff. Um, I just did one in Charlotte last weekend, North Carolina. I was on a family farm. So they're kind of all over the place. They're, most weekends they have them somewhere. Uh, I travel to them for the most part. So I did last year. I went to Atlanta, Charlotte, Fayetteville, Cincinnati, and the DC one. I think that might be it. And so far, I've already done Atlanta and Charlotte again this year. I'm going up to New Jersey at the end of April. Then I'm do some more at the end of the year, or coming up. But I'd some other stuff I was planning around, so I haven't figured out the schedule there. But yeah, so they're kind of all over the place.
And how do they, like, is it like an obstacle course, I
Yeah.
guess? Like, and typically how many obstacles are you going through on the Sparta run?
So they have a couple different distances. So they have the 5K, 10K, 21K, and then they have the ultra too, which is like a 50K, I think. Um, I've done so in Atlanta. I did three. I did 21, 10, and 5. I haven't done the ultras yet, but I've done the other ones. So yeah, so it just depends. So like the 21K, I think has like 30 something obstacles. Usually the 10K has like 25, and the 5K has 20. And then so the 5K, all of the ones in the 5K are in the other two, and then each one as you go up has additional ones. So
Like, wow. Like, I mean, I've run one 5K, just regular 5K. That was a challenge. So I can't imagine doing that and then adding obstacles to it. You have like are the obstacles relatively the same at, you know, each of the different ones, or do
yeah,
they change up drastically?
for the most part they're the same. Yeah, some that change up a couple things here and there depending on. So like a lot of the ones that are like in the farms, they have like hay bales you jump over instead of like some walls, things like that, which is just fun, things like that. So, but yeah, for the most part they're the same, with just some slight differences here and there.
And do you have, you know, through the courses that you've gone through so far, do you have a favorite obstacle that you've gone through?
No, I'm really bad about favorites. I just like to me, I just not. There's nothing I have that's really truly like a favorite thing. I just don't get that attached to things for whatever reason. Just never really have. Um, I do like. There's some that are like more challenging than one. There's one that's like a slant, and then there's like rock climbing grips, then holes, like portholes, and then like a chain. And you got to like basically use your arm, hands, and then you can't put your feet on anything other than just flat against the wall and go across that and then hit the bell at the end. That one's tough. So I always like doing that one, and when I can complete it, I'm really happy because that's usually the one if I'm going to fail one, that's typically the one I fail.
Okay.
Because of the slant of the wall, um, it can get really slick. So like if you're wet, it's like really hard to do, and it's very very grip intensive. So depending on where they put it in the course, it could be if you're super tired. A lot of people just they just skip it or whatever, and they just do like the penalty. So it could be that's a pretty tough one. So like I said, usually I'm happy when I get that one, just because it's usually one of the more challenging. It has like one of the highest fail rates. So
yeah, and like as you're describing, I'm thinking about is like, hey, is there a way I can just walk around that one? I don't know if that's going to be the one for me.
yeah, they have penalty loops. Usually just extra running. Sometimes like a burpee station, something like that. So you do like 30 burpees, which sucks in the middle of a course.
I just take the wall. Burpees. I cried once doing burpees. Like I was at football practice. We got in trouble for something. I don't remember what happened, but we were doing burpees. And I remember it's like cold. Like the ground is like
Yeah.
may as well be the street at that point. And I'm like Oh my God. So yeah, I'd probably just try to climb the wall. No
Yeah,
burpees for Dante.
burpees are a little brutal at times, but it's very cardio heavy too. And like you're already tired and you're kind of sore or whatever, and it's like, do you get 30 burpees? Like, oh.
Yeah, I think at like over the summer during our warm-ups for jiu-jitsu one time, coach just randomly called for burpees.
Yeah.
I'd never heard it before, and I was so confused. It was only 10. I was like, oh no, like what are we
Yeah.
doing here? I think I might have to leave.
They,
Like, I didn't
they,
sign up
beat,
for burpees.
they beat you down pretty quick, that's for sure.
Yeah, it builds character.
It does, yeah.
It was a rough practice after that. Like not rough in like a bad way, but like rough. Like after those burpees, I was like, oh, I'm ready for anyone now. Y'all didn't got under my skin.
Yeah.
And as you got started with doing the Sparta runs, like that first one that you did, did you have like kind of any prep going into it? Like as far as like being in shape, did you understand what you're going into? Because like even as I'm thinking, I was like, that might be a neat thing for Dante to try. I don't know that Dante would try it, but maybe that's a neat thing. But now in my mind is like, but how would I like Batman prep this? Like what was going into it? What was that like for you?
So quick time frame reference here is 2020 is when I was actually still going through this stuff, right? So I didn't start getting treatments until 2021, and so I actually tried my first one. I was going to do one. I went through this program, this heroic program, and one of the final stages of getting your certification with them was to do a Spartan race. So I was out in LA and I was in December 2022, and I was supposed to do the Spartan race with them. But the night before, I just saw something in my medical chart about my heart, and it was kind of like got me worried, whatever. And that time, I still didn't understand the brain-body connection, so my body just kind of freaked out. I started having all kinds of pain. My heart rate was all over the place. I took a Vicodin. I was on those TENS machines, those stimulators or whatever. I had those. I had some heat pads. I was using some ice. I was just trying to get my body to calm down. I just couldn't get it calm enough. So I couldn't end up doing it. So after that point, I was like, no, I'm going to figure out a way to get to the starting line. And I'm going to do one. So that February, I had my third treatment and I started physical therapy. And I have an in-house physical therapist that comes to my house every weekend. I just pay out of pocket because we can work on what I need rather than what the insurance says we can. So I just started small. I started with one push-up a day. I started with one, just hanging or whatever. Like let me backtrack just a second. So when I first started my rehab from this stuff, I knew I wanted to do something like this. I wanted to be more physical again. So I couldn't, like I said, go from my couch to my fridge. So I started with 200 meters. And it would sometimes take me 30 to 60 minutes to do 200 meters. Like my body was just shutting down the whole time. But I kept telling myself, using these mental skills, am I making it worse? Is it worse than I've ever felt? Yes or no? If the answer was no, then I'm not making it worse. But I'm going to have to push through this because my brain now associates this stuff with negativity or pain, right? So I had to work through that. And then once that became more comfortable, I started increasing the distance. And every treatment I did, was getting stronger and stronger. And then eventually I started doing with push-ups and then hanging to be able to do pull-ups, and then eventually one pull-up a day. And I started just building from there. The row machine, I got on the rower and I just do like 5 pulls, right? That's all I could do. I was just letting my nervous system get trained to be able to do that, and then eventually add more and more. So building up to that, to get back to answer your question, is I'd had my third treatment that February 2023. So then I was working with my physical therapist, and I worked up to that. I think it was like I was doing like 18 push-ups a day, doing my physical therapy stuff, and then I think 10 pull-ups, and then some ab stuff, right? And then I was working in to be able to just kind of like wear a weight vest. And that's really all I did. I did some running because I couldn't quite do a lot of running because it was still, my neck stuff wasn't like quite strong enough. I would still get really dizzy doing it. So I would run a little bit here and there. So, but my goal was I just needed to get to the starting line. As I don't care if I have to run, walk, crawl across the finish line. I just need to get to the starting line first this time. And if I start the race, that's a win for me because last time I couldn't even get to the starting line. So that was my goal. And just doing that though, I was able to do all but one obstacle. And the guy that went with me, who ran the race with me, would help me with that one. So I was able to complete all the obstacles, but I needed a little bit of help on one. But I think some of that was more of a grip strength thing, just because I've not failed that one since. So there's really not. It's a lot of grip. It's a lot of like if you can do some pull-ups, things like that. Like that's and then running, a little bit of running, but they don't care if you walk or anything. It's just it's more your race. So training wise, that's all I really did. And then now I do a lot more because I'm more physically capable. I'm, leveled up a lot more, significantly more. So I just started doing the competitive side this year. So trying to get on the podium.
That's awesome. That's actually hearing that makes it like, especially what you just said there was it's your race. You're not out there saying, hey, I got to beat that guy, or no, 10 people finished, ahead of me or whatever. It's like, you're pacing your own time. All right. I did this, next time out, can I do, a little faster or, complete all the obstacles versus like, if I had to skip one or two. So good.
Yeah. And to put that in perspective, right. So like, if you're running the competitive side, obviously you want to win, right? You're usually probably in really good shape, things like that. But like, so a lot of the people are just out there. They just want people to get out there. Other people are using it for like a self thing, right? So for instance, when I was in West Virginia last year, I did all three out there, and I was in line to get my picture with the medal, whatever, because that was the first time I did all three in a weekend. I was standing like this lady that was behind me. She was after it was a 5K, right? Like, I'm not trying to dismiss it being a 5K, but it was just the last one of the day, and she was kind of crying, and I was like, "Hey, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" Right? Because like sometimes people get hurt or whatever. And she's like, "No, I think it was like like less than a year ago, she was like 100 some pounds overweight, and she's like, I could never have dreamed of doing something like this." So her thing was just it was again her race. She was something she was never able to do in the past. So just getting to the finish line, no matter what the time was, it didn't really matter. It was something she was so proud of, right? So again, nobody's out there judging you. It's like, did you get to the finish line? Like that's all anybody cares about. Another lady in Atlanta, she was like running. She had to skip, several things, especially when there was like kind of water-based stuff because she had stitches in her knees. She was just trying to get out there and so stay active, even though she was injured, right? So it's just all about like, hey, just get out there, do something that just trying to stay active, trying to accomplish something that somebody else told you probably couldn't, right? So that's really what it's about, man. Nobody really cares. They're going to help you out, especially if you're not running on the competitive side. You can help people, you can get help, things like that. So like it doesn't really matter. People and they love helping. Like I've literally sat there and let people step over me to get over walls and things like that. So it's like there's people. The community is just really fun to be around.
Good. That's super cool. Like that now makes me feel like more like, oh man, I'm starting to feel more into the idea of trying this. Is like, I think I had a buddy who did one several years back. I think he couldn't make it, and he asked me like, "Hey, I can't make it. Do you want to like take my place or something like that?" Yeah. And like, I know I talked to him like a month prior, and I was like, "No, I'm all right." Like, but thanks for thinking of me, but no, that's not what Dante do. I do jiu-jitsu. Like I wear pajamas and wrestle people. Sometimes superhero costumes. Like I don't be running. But like just hearing that, it's like, kind of like you said, people helping each other, and people doing it for one reason or the other, whether it be they never dreamt that they could do it, or, someone told them like, somebody beat it into their head that they like, you're not capable of doing this. And, they're going out there and
Yeah,
winning.
and they call it a race, but at the end of the day, run or whatever. But there was when I did the Fayetteville one, right? For instance, I went down there, and that was the first time. So when I did the Fayetteville one last year, I was planning on doing all three distances within the year, and the one's called the Beast is a 21K, which is a half marathon with 30 obstacles right through the woods. I was not prepared for that, but I was like, I kept pushing it off further and further in the year. I was like, maybe I'll do it in October, and now maybe I'll do it in November, maybe I'll do it in December, because I have to do it in the calendar year to get the season trifecta, whatever they call it. But then I realized, I was like, at one point I go, man, I think I'm actually just afraid of this race. So I was like, I just need to find the next one that's fairly close, and I'm going to sign up for it. So I signed up. There was one in Fayetteville, North Carolina, being in the DC area. It's relatively close. So I just drove down there. I was not ready for it, right? And I was out there, and I got to mile 9. I was doing pretty good. I hit mile 9, and my body just shut down. And I was at this one obstacle, and I was like literally like shaking and wobbling and like almost seizing, right? And I just laid down. Overheated. I didn't have whatever. I didn't have energy, and I was like I couldn't move. I was like wrestling the internal dialogue of like trying not to die and tell them to come, pick me up from medical or whatever. I was like literally there like 60 to 90 minutes, like laying at this obstacle, going like, nah, man, like I'm 4 miles, right? And I was like, I can't give up. And I was like, no, I'm going to die right here in this course. Like going through this whole dialogue, right? And there was this lady that came by at one point. There's a lot of people that came by and give me like different things, like some, salt tabs and things like this. But there was this like overweight lady, whatever. She was walking around. She was just walking the entire course, right? Didn't look like somebody who'd be out there. Like, and I'm not trying to dismiss her by any stretch of imagination. I'm just, she's just describing. So, and she gave me like a mustard pack, which I didn't realize was a thing, by the way, in like endurance things, because it has like salts and vinegars in it, vinegar and salts in it. So it's like really like a quick electrolyte pack, basically. So she gave me that, and then like again, the volunteer gave me a bag of like corn chips or whatever, which again I hadn't eaten any of that in a long time. But the salt, they was so salty. But it and then right about that time the temperature dipped and I got cooled down, and I was like, okay, I think I could, I was at the obstacle I really wanted to try, because it looked like it was really interesting, right? I was like, you know what? I think let me see if I can stand up. So I finally was able to stand up, and I was like, okay. I stood up, and then I was like, okay, well, let me see if I can do this obstacle. I just want to try it, and then I'll see what happens. So I was able to complete the obstacle, and I was like, I feel strong enough to walk. I like, you know what? If I could walk the whole thing, right? It's only 4 more miles, whatever. Well, I ended up catching up to that lady. Again, she walked the entire thing. I don't know if she did any of the obstacles, nothing, but she was just out there having fun, talking to people, whatever. And she's helping people out, and she's like, so I just stopped and I literally said, hey, can I give you a hug? Because you did something that helped me out. And like, I don't think I would have been able to finish this race without. So I just gave her a hug and just kept going. Right. And she was like, yeah, whatever, no problem. So just people like that out there all the time. Right. It's like, she wasn't trying to win. She wasn't trying to do anything. She was just trying to be out there and be active, and nobody cared. Right? Like there, I was like, and I was so thankful for her. I didn't even care. It doesn't matter to me about anything else, but so yeah, it's people think it's a lot harder than it is, but again, you just run your own race, go out there and do your thing.
Dude, that's awesome. It's like hearing stories like that. Like I always say, when we talk about people, humanity, I always say I believe most people are good. They're like a high percentage of people are good.
Yep.
We just hear about that low percentage because whatever reason, and like hearing a story like that just like makes my heart fill, because I'm like, dude, that's just hearing that, it's like in the, I guess you could say, social media world period, like all you hear is about people stepping on others to get to the next rung, undercutting someone, and meanwhile you have this event here. You had a lady, like you said, she's just walking, doing her thing. She's there.
Yep.
And, she helped you out. And that made a big difference, and just hearing stuff like that, I think is so important for people. Some folks, hear that and it's inspiring and makes them feel like, what? Like there are good, good folks out there. There's, love. So
Yeah.
that's super cool, man.
There's
And
actually,
yeah,
and to that point, there's a couple. There's Oscar Mike that does helps with like disabled veterans and stuff. They take people through that course that are like disabled and stuff. There's another one called More Hearts and Scars. There's this dude, big black guy, right? Like in Atlanta, literally had this guy who was in a wheelchair or whatever, couldn't use his legs. Put the dude on his back, going down this steep ass hill, right? And like we're all like, it was me and a couple other guys. I was just, I had some other dude, random guy I found I was talking to on the course. We just happened to like sync up a couple times. We were just sitting there chatting, and we look back, we see this dude carrying this guy on his back, right? Like this real, crippled guy on his back, trying to go down this hill. So we were like stopped and tried to help them out to get down the hill. Like it was like literally like up against a tree. I had my grab his arm, and so he didn't slide or whatever. While somebody else took the wheelchair down because they couldn't push him in the wheelchair to get down. This dude literally carried this guy for like a mile trying to get through this, like navigate through this area. And they would put him on his back, and or use like pulleys and stuff from the other side to like help this dude. So like they take these crippled, these like disabled people and literally carry them at times through this course. So like, yeah, I mean, it's incredible things. So like this dude's, his feat of strength, just doing that by itself is just incredible. So yeah, I mean, just see stuff like that, and you're like, man, like there is a lot of good in humanity. But like you said, we see the bad because that's what the news wants the perception to be. But there's so much good out there. And being in communities like this that's why I love it, right? Because you see stuff like that, and you're like, man, it just tears at you, because you're like, man, like first off, I want to get to that strength where I can be that guy carrying the dude on my back, like that's what I want. I want to be able to take something like that and carry them, get them through something like that, and just to, because that's what they want to do that too. They just can't, right? So
that's like you said, there's a lot of good out there.
Yeah,
and
incredible people.
All right, well, Kevin, thank you for doing this, man. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up here, but thank you so much for sharing your insight, your story, and just inspiring, I guess, especially at the end here with the Sparta runs. I'm like, oh, like, dude, I'm about to log out of here, go tell my wife, hey baby, like sign me up.
Yeah,
but before we get out of here, you have any shout outs or mentions that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
If you just follow me on Instagram, Coach Kevin Brewer, at Coach Kevin Brewer. I put all this mental stuff there, and reach out to me there if you need any help. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Absolutely, I'll be sure to put your link there in the show notes, and get people connected to you. And
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for your time, man. This was a lot of fun. Like I just like the conversation, back and forth, gonna be able to talk through some things and have some fun.
Like it, I like I said earlier, this is all therapy for me. So when I speak to individuals like yourself, especially, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to play this back for the edit, because I'm taking notes. I got stuff to work on and go back to my therapist. Like, see, I told you.
Yeah.
But thank you. And as always, to you guys, the listeners, thank you. If y'all have any questions or concerns, criticisms, anything, if you want to be a guest, reach out. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram, Off the Mats Podcast, also on Instagram, or you can email me. I do see my emails. I met Kevin here.
Yeah.
And it's offthemats2020@gmail.com. I like hearing from everybody. So again, if you want to come on, feel free. And also, don't hesitate to go leave a review, because it really helps me on the algorithm. So it gets people eyeballs on the show. It puts us, out there. So go leave a review, like a good one. Don't go say no bad things. But keep that streak of like good reviews going. I love to hear it. I want to give a big shout out to my crew over at Nerd Rage Radio as we cross episode 500 not too long ago. Super proud of those guys. And if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be doing a podcast. So Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn Phil, Ricky Ticky, all those guys. And Chris was actually just on my WrestleMania episode. So, big shout out to that guy as well. The tallest dude I know. Also, like anytime I'm next to him, I legitimately feel like a child. I feel like he's going to pick me up. So a big shout out to those guys. I love you. I also want to shout out my other podcast, So You Like Horror. If you're into scary movies, go check that out. We're currently doing a theme of remakes versus originals throughout the year, once per month. And I believe we're going to be coming up on a Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984 versus the remake, I believe was in 09. So that's going to be one of our upcoming ones. We just did a Thing from Another World from 1951 versus John Carpenter's The Thing in 1982. So, we're having some fun with these things. Go check it out if you're into horror movies and a little bit of the history of it and themes. I love talking about themes that these movies all share and how it pertains to our society and culture and stuff. So go check those things out. And again, if you're into horror movies and you want to be a guest there, let me know. You can find me on Instagram. So You Like Horror. All the words are separated by underscores, or you can email me. I believe the email is soyoulikehorror@gmail.com. That one I don't check that much, but give it a try. We'll figure it out. And last but not least, I want to thank my guest here, Coach Kevin Brewer. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, and your journey. Definitely love to have you on. And it's like these first episodes are always kind of to get to know you. Once you get to talking to people, it's like, oh, now we can really like take the training wheels off and like start talking. So, love to have you back on if you like to do that. But, let's have a good time here. And again, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, man. I really liked it.
Good. And again, to the listeners, we love you guys. You know what it is. You guys keep listening, and we're going to definitely keep making these shows. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
They were with it. Now let me sing a song.